Now let's create our growth solver. In almost all of the time, you need a way to trigger the animation. You don't want the effect to just start right away. You need a way to control the effect. So let's see some techniques for creating the growth solver. So as always, let's create a geometry node and let's dive inside and let's create a sphere. Let's add this polygonal sphere, and onto the sphere let's change this to polygons. Now I have an adjust simple frequency parameter to adjust to add more divisions. So let's add more divisions onto our sphere. Let's keep adding this, something like that. And now let's create another sphere from where we will start our growth to start. And this time I'm going to use a primitive sphere, and the primitive sphere is just a one single point with a radius, which is a faster to work with. And for this one, let's lower down its uniform scale. We don't need that big sphere, something like that. And now let's add a mask from geometry node that we have used before. Let's add this. That is the geometry for attribute and the reference geometry. Let's view the result. And after this sphere, let's add a transform node to move our sphere. When the node is selected, hover over to the viewport. Let me place my sphere from where I want my growth to start. I want to start from this side, let's say. Now let's go into the mask from geometry and let's visualize our mask attribute. Okay, so we have a mask. Now let's see how we can make this mask grow. And for that, let's add an attribute warp node in here. And let's connect this and let's dive inside the attribute warp node. And in here, let's import our mask attribute by using a bind node. And in here, let's type the attribute name, and that is the mask. And in here, let's add an add node, and let's add this. And in here, on the second input, let's promote this parameter, and that will be our offset value. So the simplest way to offset, just middle mouse button on the input, and in here click promote parameters, and that will promote the parameter onto geometry level, so we can adjust the value here. Now if I add the value, I need to export this as well. Right now I'm adding and not exporting, and for that let's add a bind export node in here. Bind export, and I want to export this newly created our method with the mask. Okay, and now let's add this, and let's go back and onto the attribute warp. Now if I adjust, now here as you can see, I can control the growth. I can go onto this opposite side to really I can control the effect. Okay, and let's rename this. Right now it says input number 2. Let's go back, and if you click on this node, it will collapse this input parameter node. Here we have this parameter. Let's bring up its parameter, and onto the name, let's change this one to be our offset. And onto the label, let's label this as a offset as well. Okay, let's go back, and now we have an offset value renamed. That's good. Now let's animate this parameter, and for that let me go back onto the frame number maybe 15, and after the 15 frame, let's make this completely disappear. Press and hold the Alt key and click to add a key, and maybe on the course of 100 and maybe 36, let's change this to all the way up to 1. Let me see. Okay, If I change this to 1, we have a completely covered up with the mask. And let's add a key in here, and let's rewind and hit play. Okay, so we have the attribute growing, and we can control its ramp if we want to adjust this. For example, this mask, if I want to add a contrast to my mask, I can easily add that by adding a ramp parameter in between. So in here, let's add a ramp parameter node, and let's connect this in between and onto the ramp parameter. Ramp type is set to RGB. Let's change this to spline ramp, and now we can go back. Now we have the option to adjust our ramp. Let's bring up its second knob by changing its value. So now we have essentially the same thing. What I can do, I can play around with the ramp to add a contrast in my ramp. Okay, and I can also reverse the effect by reversing my domain. And if I click on this reverse domain, now I will have an opposite effect. Let's see. Okay, and now let's control this with a noise. Let's use this growth attribute to control the noise. And first, let me go into the mask from geometry and click on this visualizer to hide the visualization. And in here, let's lay down a mountain node, and let's connect this into the mountain node and onto the element size. Maybe the element size is fine. Let's animate the noise and hit play. Okay, so we have something going on, and we can adjust the amplitude to add, and let's lower down the element size. I think that's fine. Now let's control this noise by enabling the blend option. If I enable this, here I can use a simple slider value to control the noise, or I can change this to use attribute. So let's use our attribute that we have created, and that is called the mask, which is good. And now let's view the effect, hit play. Okay, and here as you can see, now we are fading out, and we can actually go on to the opposite size by reversing the domain. Now we do not have any noise. Let's hit play, and now we should start to see some noise. Okay, and we can control its transition if we go into this our attribute warp and play around with our ramp. Let's see the result once again. Okay, so that's the basic growth solver.